But if you wanna find me, please just send me location. Send me location.
They're selling you all wolf tickets, people. You're eating them right up.
Hey, pussy, are you still there?
I back. Trust me, I back.
But I'm not impressed by your performance.
Ele deu um não. Ele deu um não. Não tinha fucking melt, ele deu um não. Ele deu um fucking não. Not one of you ele deu um não.
I'll tell you what, bro. I was out there, I was fighting all the hitters, bro. You ain't fought no hitters.
Come on, guys. It's normal.
I'm not saying I would fight you. I would kill you.
John, do you think I'm just gonna sit there and let you kill me, John? I mean, really?
No, don't be scared, homie. I'd like to take this chance to apologize to absolutely nobody. The double champ does what the fuck he wants.
I'm gonna beat you into the living death. I mean, maybe that's your job, but where I come from, people like that get slapped.
That's fucking illegal.
Nick Diaz, you just shook up the world. How's that feel?
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
Yeah, this is a simulated death match. And you haven't simulated anybody's death yet.
I said it last year. We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over.
What is the game plan going in against him?
The game plan is you go in there, hit him with some good shit, don't get hit, and come home with a pocket full of cash.
Who the fuck is that guy?
Everybody's on steroids. The whole UFC, everybody.
I'm gonna go home tonight. I'm gonna drink a Coors Light. That's a Coors Light because Bud Light won't pay me nothing.
Do you want to be a fighter? That is my question.
Any of you radio personalities think you want smoke? Call me Mr. Chimney. I want smoke.
Yes. What is up? MCR family on the Daily Edition Show live on YouTube, obviously podcast form, iTunes, Spotify, iHeartRadio, etc. Hit that like button of the show. Subscribe. I'm Matt, the Hipster Hunter, and joined today by our co-host Cameron Gillen. Cameron, how you doing, man?
What's going on, man? Good to be doing a show, especially with these topics that have been coming up in the news today, especially with the UFC and ONE. So looking forward to getting into it.
Yes, obviously it is preview day, so obviously we're going to prioritize, like we always do on Wednesdays, the fights coming up this weekend. So Daniel Jacobs versus Sergiy Derevyanchenko, all the way down to UFC Fight Night, Oezdemir versus Anthony Smith. We're going to break down all the action. Of course, obviously get to the news of the day, boxing, MMA, and obviously, like Cameron alluded to, the UFC ONE Championship trade for Demetrious Johnson and Ben Askren. It is historic in many ways. Definitely can tackle it from so many different angles. So cannot wait to delve in and do a deep dive on that topic. But that would be in the second half of the show. First, we're obviously going to break down all of the action this weekend. Cameron, I just want a temperature check. What are you most looking forward to this weekend in terms of fights? What fight has your interest the most? What fight are you most hyped for? What card are you most hyped for?
Obviously, I feel like the Jacobs Derevyanchenko fight. I feel like that's intriguing. I do like the Prograis Flanagan fight. I think those two fights, kind of intrigue me quite a bit. Especially the Jacobs one, like by far, I think that's the one I'll be watching live of all the fights this weekend, but for sure, because it's a title, it's a good fight, two of the top middleweights. Well, you got a top middleweight, established middleweight against a up and coming prospect who many have been touting for a while. So that fight I'll be watching most definitely. And Prograis Flanagan, that's a good fight. I feel it'd be interesting to see what Flanagan can do. He's quite durable, and Prograis is powerful. So. Yeah, both those fights for me are the ones I'll be tuning into. I
agree. I think those probably are the highlights of the weekend from what it seems. Obviously, the Pulev Hughie Fury fight, just for him in terms of standpoint of rankings, that has a drastic effect on the heavyweight division potentially. I think if Hughie Fury wins that, obviously IBF mandatory status, and on top of that, I think it really catapults him to a true contender spot. I think when he fought Joseph Parker, a lot of people still viewed him as a prospect when he fought Joseph Parker for that WBO title. I think we've seen a Hughie Fury that's still more experienced. It'd be interesting to see, obviously, going from that fight. But let's be honest, that fight probably won't be the most entertaining of the weekend. But let's get to the marquee event and work our way down. Daniel Jacobs versus Sergiy Derevyanchenko for the vacant IBF middleweight belt. after the whole shenanigan with Triple G and such. God, that was such a clusterfuck to say the least. But to digress from that, table that, because we don't need to delve into that rabbit hole. This fight on paper is highly interesting to me because, in my opinion, this fight is a battle of real estate. It's a battle of range. Can Derevyanchenko keep Daniel Jacobs along the ropes, stay on the inside in mid-range, and work his combinations? Make the long range of Jacobs obsolete due to the range of where the fight's taking place. That, to me, is the crucial sort of tactical point of this matchup. Daniel Jacobs can keep this fight on the outside, whether it be him being the aggressor, him being on the back foot, doesn't matter. If this fight is on the outside of his jab, I think he should win this one pretty convincingly. I know Derevyanchenko has a lot of hype behind him. I think, obviously, it's deserved. Great power, great combination work. But we also have a guy that is inexperienced. His best win is Sergiy Johnson. That's a far cry from beating Peter Quillen or being really the first guy to test Triple G, and he arguably won that fight for Daniel Jacobs. I think, again, Derevyanchenko, for a lot of reasons, to me, this parallels, let's say, Charlo versus Erickson Lubin, where you have a obviously gifted fighter as the B-side, as the challenger, but it seems too soon for me. Where a couple years, a few more contender-style fights for him, I think would have been highly beneficial to Derevyanchenko in this matchup. However, he's not afforded that. He's only 12-0 with his best win being Terry Johnson. Cameron, let me get like your brief sort of thought process about this fight, particularly because it is really an interesting matchup.
Well, I pretty much echo what you said. That I feel like I favour Jacobs in this fight. The problem is with Derevyanchenko, there's no doubt there's potential there. But I kind of fall back on what you kind of said. His best win is Terry Johnson. His last fight, it was around March time, and he fought a really poor kind of opponent. I can't remember what his name was, but it was on one of the cards. It was in New York. It was at the Barclays Center. I can't remember what undercard it was on.
Johnson. It was Deshaun Johnson, and it was the.
It was on the Wilder Ortiz fight, right?
Yep. Yes, it was.
Yeah, and coming to the Jacobs fight, of that kind of fight, and Terry Johnson. Terry Johnson, no disrespect, but this guy isn't a top middleweight. He's been floating around. He's been floating about. He spoke about being the mandatory at one point for Golovkin, but that's about it. So for me, I feel like Jacobs he's quite a big favourite. I would be surprised if Jacobs didn't win this fight. But then again, Derevyanchenko is kind of an unknown talent at this point. You feel like we don't know what his potential is. We don't know how good he is because we've not seen him against a top middleweight. We've not seen him against a top 15 middleweight. So now he's jumping straight in with Danny Jacobs, who is, arguably a 100% a top 5 middleweight. So we're going to see a lot about Derevyanchenko in this fight. But then again, Jacobs in his last fight against Selecki, Selecki's a good opponent, but Jacobs struggled in that fight. Selecki did very well in that fight. So maybe Derevyanchenko can go in there and get that belt. But this is what's intriguing because of the unknown factor of where Derevyanchenko is and how good he is. So that's why I'm intrigued by it. And Jacobs is a proven middleweight and it's against an unproven middleweight. So in that sort of sense, it's an intriguing fight.
Yeah, I agree on a lot of points. And to add to it, like the Terry Johnson fight lasted 12 rounds. It took until the 12th round to get him out of there. And Terry Johnson is a far cry from, obviously, Daniel Jacobs. And on top of that, in that fight particularly, we saw Sergiy Derevyanchenko be very hesitant in the beginning. We saw him on the back foot, be defensive, be unsure of himself in the range. We saw a very slow start from Derevyanchenko. And I know Daniel Jacobs isn't really the fastest starter in the world. I know, obviously, the Peter Quillen fight aside, he's usually a guy that has to work his way into the fight. And even though you brought up his last 2 fights, which, while he won them, and I think he won them very convincingly, they were anticlimactic in almost every way. I think this fight's going to be quite different. I think Sergiy Derevyanchenko, just due to the height, the reach, the skill discrepancy, the experience discrepancy, I think we're going to see Derevyanchenko make a lot of mistakes. I think we're going to see Daniel Jacobs capitalize on it because Derevyanchenko is not that sort of foundational when it comes to defense. He has a really good roll under and counter combinations. He does that pretty well, but other than that, doesn't really have quick lateral movement in the way that we sort of see with other quick-footed defensive boxers. Doesn't have great waist movement like we'd see with other great defensive boxers. I think Daniel Jacobs is going to be able to keep this fight on the outside, go at his pace, and we're going to see Derevyanchenko, by round 4 or 5, realize, holy shit, I haven't really been doing that much, and I've been getting hit with this jab for these 5 rounds. I'm losing, and he's going to try to fix that. He's going to try to adapt to that. I think he's going to fail. I think he's going to make a huge mistake and get countered viciously by Daniel Jacobs and get knocked out probably within 10 rounds. Derevyanchenko, to me, highly talented prospect, but he is not a contender yet, clearly. Anything, Cameron? Let me get your sort of a prediction on the fight.
Yeah, I feel like Jacobs will win a points decision. I feel like he'll take on points. But then again, what's Derevyanchenko's, cardio like in terms of at a top level against a guy who's going to be pushing it, pushing the offense and throwing big shots and being very offensive. How is Derevyanchenko going to take that for 12 rounds? So there's so many unanswered questions. So for me, I feel like Jacobs, for me, will win this fight on points. Pretty confident about that. But that's what I'm going for.
Let's go to the co-main event: Alberto Machado versus Yandel Evans. Obviously, this fight, I think, should probably produce a very entertaining fight. I think it should be exciting as long as it lasts. But I feel like this fight's pretty obvious about who would win. It's Alberto Machado. Clearly, the more foundational boxer. The guy with the better jab. He just has a better sense of his game plan, his strategy, and executing it. Yandel Evans, to me, gets sucked into fights he shouldn't. Starts brawls that he shouldn't be brawling. Obviously, the Javier Fortuna fight is the perfect example of that. The second the fight started getting a little bit intense, he tried to match that. And, his lack of technical sort of, not skill, but foundational skill, I should say, in terms of just bringing the hands back to the chin over and over again. He wouldn't do that. So he got caught. I think he's going to get caught again against Machado. The second that these two guys start really exchanging, I think Machado's going to catch him and really hurt Evans and get him out of there. Because really that's all we have from Yandel Evans at the very top is that Javier Fortuna fight, in my opinion. Cam, what's your take on this fight?
Yeah, I favour Machado pretty heavily. The problem is with Evans, I'm not too sure how many fights he's at. I watched his last fight against Rosa. That was about a year ago now. But I think he's been quite inactive. I think he's ended up maybe 2 fights in the last 3 years or something. I mean, the guy's been pretty inactive. The Fortuna fight was a good 4 years ago or something. It's about 2014, right?
Yep.
That fight. Might have been longer than that. I mean, in that sense, he's had a good few performances. Rosa, he was undefeated. I know it was a close fight, but for me, I think Machado is I think he'll stop Evans, to be honest. Probably around the mid rounds. That's what I'm going for in this fight. I just think Machado's just above kind of Evans. No, that's no disrespect to Evans. Like I said, he's had a few good performances, but I just feel like in everything, in a lot of departments, Machado's a lot better fighter. And I feel like, like you said, Evans tends to get into fights that he shouldn't be getting into. And I feel like that'll be his downfall again in this fight. Similar to the Fortuna fight.
Yes, I absolutely agree. And plus, let's be honest, Machado is ready for the Miguel Berchelts, the Mickey Ramons, the Gervonta Davises of the world. He's ready for that caliber, not Yandel Evans. I think this is sort of a stay busy fight because really everyone else at the top is busy, except for Gervonta Davis. God knows what he's doing other than being on Twitter. But I think Machado is he's here trying to be active. I can't blame him. Yandel Evans is at least a guy that's known for hardcores. He's a guy that has always made himself kind of, use the word beloved in the regional scene by fans, media. So I think it's a good sort of pick for a stay busy fight.
I think it's a good. I think what I'm impressed with Machado as well, because this is a guy who stopped Jezreel Corrales, and Corrales was a guy who beat Uchiyama, who was regarded as the man at the time. So Machado, for me, obviously Penny gets through this fight, which I think he will. I want to see him, in his unification fights. I want to see him in there with Berchelt. That's the fight for me, based on the fact that Gervonta Davis just seems to be who knows where his career's going right now. He's messing around. He's got problems with Mayweather and things. So I think Berchelt Machado is the fight to make next year. Hopefully we get that, but who knows?
Last fight we're going to talk about on the card is the Heather Hardy Shelly Vincent fight, and obviously everyone on Twitter right now is talking about the press conference photo or.
I was. Have you seen my tweet about
it? And here's the thing, like obviously, Shelly Vincent seems to be in the LGBTQ community, which is totally fine. She's rocking a beard, and I'll say this, a well trimmed beard at that. As somebody that has a beard, and I know you have a beard as well, it's hard to trim that shit and keep it tight like that. And so salute to her. She kept it professional.
I've just actually shaved mine, but I had to chop it down with scissors at first because it was that long. So
it's a pain, man. So salute to Shelly Vincent for having the trimmed beard on the go. Like that was good. I'm impressed by that. And I'm not offended by it. I don't really care about it. It was just one of those things when you saw it, I thought it was Photoshop. Like I legitimately thought it was fake when I first saw it. I didn't think it was real. Salute to Shelly. I mean, standing proud. This fight still should be a fun, entertaining scrap, regardless of that facial feature. These two women, when they fought back, I think it was in 2015, 2016, one of the fight of the years, definitely one of the best women's fights of the last decade or so, I would say. And plus, I mean, Heather Hardy, even though she is Mitty, God, with the background over there, the static. Mitty, I'm gonna kick you out, and you have to come back in. Okay, I'm sorry. There's some extra noise there, Mitty. Digressing back to what we're talking about, Heather Hardy, she is still, I think, even though she's had some wins and losses in her MMA career, that's been sort of tough for her. She's been undefeated in boxing. She's always been, I think, pretty fundamentally sound when she goes out there. Always puts on good scraps. I think she should win this one on points pretty convincingly in a fun affair, and that's okay with me. Cameron?
I mean, I'm not going to sit here and lie. I've not actually watched the first fight. I've not even watched Shelly Vincent fight before. I've not really paid attention to kind of women's boxing that much, apart from, the select few, the recognisable ones. It's not really my thing. So for me to comment on it, I feel it would be a bit disrespectful.
That's okay. Definitely go back, watch the first one, though. It's a fun fight. Even if you're not a fan of women's boxing, I think it's one of those fights you can watch and just be entertained by. If you're bored in the middle of the night, wanting to even watch a fight. Moving on to the next card, Regis Prograis versus Terry Flanagan, World Boxing Super Series on DAZN. Also, sort of digressing to the Daniel Jacobs fight, one of the last events on HBO. Sort of want to point that out. Get the sad song out here. At the end of the era, it's coming. It's coming. Get hyped. But anyways, digressing. DAZN, which is taking over HBO's entire stable. Prograis versus Flanagan. I think this is going to be a fun fight, but I think it's a pretty easy one to pick. I think Prograis should win this one rather convincingly, even though, again, it should be entertaining because I think both guys are entertaining fighters just in their natural element. Flanagan's really only hope, in my opinion, is to really stick behind that jab because Prograis is a little bit susceptible to that with the way he does his shoulder roll, almost like Anthony Yard-like in a way, where I can feel like he's just a little bit hittable, and Terry Flanagan could take advantage of that. But I think Prograis, in terms of his counterboxing skill, his ability to counter your combination, mid-combination, and really hurt you is quite extraordinary for this division, to be quite honest. And I think his durability factor is so high. We've never seen him hurt. He has been hit. And I think Terry Flanagan just doesn't really have the pop to take advantage of Prograis being slightly hittable at times. What's your take on this fight, Cam?
I like this fight. I mean, look, Flanagan, at 140, he's not even got a resume. We're talking about a guy who's had one fight, 140, and lost to Maurice Hooker. And no disrespect to Maurice Hooker, but I feel like Prograis is a better fighter, much bigger puncher. Flanagan's durable. He's not been he's not ever in his career been seriously rocked. I mean, down to the opposition he's fought. You know, he's not fought elite opposition. You know, we spoke about this before. A lot of people I've spoken about on Twitter. His resume, you know, he was a champion, but a lot of his defenses were pretty lackluster. You know, Orlando Cruz and Petrov and guys like that, they were really poor. And then he goes and gets Maurice Hooker. And I've said it before, I feel like Flanagan's kind of stagnated a bit because of his opposition, because of the fact he's not been tested properly since he's become champion. So, and you look at Prograis, his last few fights, he's looked really good. He blew out in Dongo. You know, he's a big puncher in that division. He's young, fresh. He beat Joel Diaz Jr. as well. So this is a guy who is really touted as potentially the best in the division. He's up there. You know, a lot of people talking about him winning this tournament. It'll be interesting. I feel like if Prograis can stop Flanagan, it will be, to some extent, a little bit of a statement, simply because the fact that Flanagan, for me, is not showing any vulnerabilities in his chin in his career. So for me, if Prograis can do that, it'll be big. I'm expecting a big performance from Prograis. You know, Flanagan's, he's our guy over in Britain, but I can't really see a way that he can win this fight. I hope he can prove me wrong and he can put up a good fight and make it competitive. But I feel like there's levels here, and I just feel like Prograis is that much better than Flanagan, and I feel like he'll probably get there. And I feel like he'll win it on points. I think that's what I'll go for. But if he can force a late stoppage, that'd be quite some statement for me. Because Flanagan, although he's not got the best resume, he's not the worst fighter in the world. I just don't feel like he's had the right test, and I feel like because of that, he's stagnated. So it'd be interesting to see what we can do against Prograis, but I can only see one winner.
And plus, I mean, Terry Flanagan coming straight off the Maurice Hooker loss to this, I don't like that. I think he should have had a couple tune-ups at least before coming right back against possibly the most dangerous guy in the division, other than maybe Josh Taylor, which obviously is still in the tournament itself. So Terry Flanagan, this move just didn't make sense to me, to be quite honest. But remember, ladies and gentlemen, you can call in 323-870-4051. Press 1 to get in the queue, or call in internationally. Email me, mixedcombatradio@gmail.com to get a free international permanent call-in link. The co-main event of that card, Ivan Branchik versus Anthony Yigit, to me is the easiest fight to predict of this entire weekend. Branchik by KO within 4. Yigit, to me, I don't know how he got this position other than being undefeated and somehow getting a high ranking with one of these sanctioning bodies. He looks really raw and unsure of himself in the ring. Definitely looks like a guy that's only recently sort of took up the sport. And Branchik, while definitely not being the world beater, is 100% a guy that's been boxing his whole life, is comfortable boxing, can brawl, great power. Yigit, to me, like, shies away from punches. Like, he'll turn his back. He'll do very amateur-like stuff in the ring. Branchik's not that. Defensively flawed? Absolutely. But there's just a different level of fighter here between Branchik and Yigit. 4 rounds, KO, Branchik, easy. Cam?
Sorry, man. It's just me while I'm mute there. But
don't worry about it.
Yeah, I'll agree with what you're saying. I think Yigit, I mean, he fought in the UK actually, one of his last fights, and he fought a guy called Joe Hughes. I'm not sure if you remember Joe Hughes, but Joe Hughes is this is a guy who's lost to likes of Tyrone Nurse, or so he got a draw against Tyrone Nurse, lost to Jack Cattrall. That's his last fight, and then you're jumping in there with Baranchik, who is an undefeated champion, who is on a roll, and he's still young himself. So for me, and he's still getting better. So for me, in this sense, I mean, I don't want to be disrespectful, but I think Anthony Yigit's best win is, in terms of name, it's still DeMarcus Corley. So for me, that is just, I feel like he's got into this tournament because he's an undefeated guy. 140 is kind of lacking in terms of guys like that. And I feel like they want to build it up, and they, because of some of the guys didn't enter it, I feel like Yigit was just kind of there, and he's in a spot. I think he's ranked. Don't get me wrong. I think he's kind of ranked quite highly in some of the governing bodies and kind of overall. But for me, I don't really see him winning this fight. I think Baranchik could be one of the dark horses, to be fair. I think it's kind of an open division, but for me, I feel like it's Baranchik or Relic. I think one of those guys are kind of wants to look out for. I don't see how Yigit put up a fight in this. Like you said, I think his kind of resume shows he's quite raw. His performances have shown he's raw. And he's not been, again, I think it's another test where he's not been tested properly going into a big fight. So I think Derevyanchenko will get him out of there mid-rounds.
I absolutely agree, if not earlier, obviously, with my 4th-round prediction. But, yeah, you get just, like you said, DeMarcus Corley is his best win, and DeMarcus Corley is the definition of a journeyman. No disrespect, but that is what it is. Branchik is clearly not that. Branchik is clearly a top 10, top 15 junior welterweight, and a guy that, like you said, is one of the dark horses. I don't think he's as much of a dark horse as, let's say, Raylick, but definitely just far and away levels and levels above Yigit, and that's okay. Like, it happens. We've seen guys that enter this World Boxing Super Series tournament that really shouldn't be here. It's unfortunately what happens in tournaments when you can't get every top guy in the division. Moving on to the next card. Oh, no, hold on. Sorry, I was looking at a different card. Moving on to the next card. Kubrat Pulev versus Hughie Fury. This fight, to me, should be close. Could be very boring and anticlimactic in every way. Pulev is a guy that really works at range, and when he's up close, he clinches a lot. Hughie Fury, a guy that likes to work at range, likes to be on the back foot, and clinches a lot when he's on the inside. Maybe has a sneaky uppercut. I'll give him that. But this fight, to me, is one that's going to be at range a lot, and when they clash, it's going to be a lot of clinching. Could be a very ugly affair. I think Hughie Fury wins on points just because he's a little bit younger. I don't think Pulev has the power to knock out Hughie Fury. And I think, age, momentum, these are all major factors that lean on Hughie Fury's side. What do you think about this matchup? Is it as boring as I'm making it out to be?
Yeah. As much as I don't want to say it, this isn't going to be an interesting fight. What I will say is Hughie Fury needs to let his hands go in this fight, right? Because the reason he didn't get the decision against Parker was because he didn't let his hands go. I thought Hughie won that fight.
Agreed.
But when the decision was called out, I didn't sit and thought, that's robbery, you know what I mean? Because I feel like even though I thought he'd done enough to win, there was kind of that area where you can think, okay, he could have done more. He should have stamped his authority on the fight more. I scored it to Hughie Fury, but I wasn't crying at the decision. For me, in this fight, I feel like Hughie has to let his hands go. We're talking about in the Parker fight. That was in his hometown. That was in the UK. That was in Hughie's hometown. That was his backyard. Now he's going to Bulgaria to fight Pulev, who, is experienced. He's older. He's a lot older than Hughie Fury, but at least a good 15 years, I believe. So, in that sense, Hughie's got the youth. He's got the freshness. He's got the boxing ability, the technical ability on his side, the movement. Don't get me wrong, Pulev's got good movement. He always has. But I just feel like he has slowed down. I feel if you watch his younger fights, he has slowed down compared, since he fought Klitschko. But I feel like in this fight, it is going to be a bit of a bore fest. It is. Their styles for me they're not going to gel well. You look at Pulev. He's not the most exciting heavyweight out there stylistically. Hughie's, not either. But Hughie, if he wants to get a decision in this fight, he can definitely win this fight, 100%. But he has to let his hands go. If he's going to go around the ring and do jab, pot shot in, and he needs to put hands together, he needs to put his combination together. And I feel like they would have learned a lot from that Parker fight. Peter Fury spoke about. I think they've learned a lot. I feel like Hughie, he's so young. He's going to develop more. He's going to get more experience. He's going to get more mature, and he's going to learn a lot more about himself. So I feel like Hughie will edge it out. I'm picking Hughie to win this fight. Because I feel like he will fix the mistakes that he made in the Parker fight in terms of activity and his punch rate and work rate. So, in that sense, I feel like Hughie will win this fight on points. I just hope that he gets a fair share of the judges because, Pulev's in Bulgaria. He's from Bulgaria, and this is in Bulgaria. But, good luck to them. I feel like Hughie will win this fight.
I agree. And plus, it's one of those fights that, again, it sort of adds some clarity to the heavyweight picture a little bit. And again, if Hughie Fury wins against Kubrat Pulev, we have another Fury in the heavyweight mix at the very top. That's always going to be a good thing, even though obviously Hughie Fury doesn't have even 1/10 of the charisma as Tyson. Just that name alone, I think, will help him. It will help his fights, help him gain money, help, I think, for the casual fan to be intrigued by fights like with him against Derek Chisora, Dylan White, Joseph Parker rematch. I think it just is different in 2018 or 2019 than it is when they fought just due to the fact that Joseph Parker fought AJ. Hughie Fury has gone on to, I think, just do better throughout his career, bounce back from that loss.
Just want to add one more thing actually on that.
Yes.
Hughie Fury in his last fight, okay, it was against Sam Sexton, who's nowhere near world level. He's a British level guy, so a British title. But Hughie for me did show in that fight that he's putting more force behind his shots. He stopped Sexton. He looks good in that fight. I feel like he's putting more force in there, and he's putting his he's planting his feet. He has to do that against Pulev. He's going to have to plant his feet at some point and really land big shots. Really put the pressure on Pulev for me, because that's how he's going to get the decision. He needs to really be eye catching him in aspects, in spots this fight his way, because that's the way he is. It works for him. But make sure, for me, Fury has to make sure he plants his feet, put punches together, and get out of there. And I feel like if he can do that, he'll win the fight.
I pretty much agree. And plus, this fight being on ESPN Plus, just for anyone listening, if you want to go check it out, really not much of an undercard, to be honest. The only real standouts I see is Pulev's brother, who's a 35-year-old, 11-0 cruiserweight, air quotes, prospect, and Savannah Marshall, who is a legit prospect in the women's midweight division, who could, in the next 3 or 4 years, fight at Clarissa Shields. I know they've been sort of jaw-jacking at each other recently. They have an amateur history between them. That's definitely a possibility. But other than that, nothing really to speak of on that card. We're going to move on to the last boxing card of the weekend. And I really don't have much to speak on it because this is not my region. So maybe Cameron has more of an in-depth take on the John Ryder, Andre Sorkin card, Ted Cheeseman on the card, I Chamberlain on the card. Just a few notable prospects / UK boxers. That card I believe is on DAZN as well. So anyone wanting to catch that on Sunday or something like that after the rest of the bigger fights, completely understand. Cameron, any sort of take on these fights, this event at all?
Yeah, that main event. The problem is, Ryder's looked good recently. He's on a nice little run. He beat Nielsen, he beat Jamie Cox, and I think he's looked pretty solid. He lost to Fielding, but it was a very close fight. I feel like Sorokin, he's undefeated, right? Like I kind of watched some footage on him. I watched this fight against Mayorga, which was literally a year ago. I feel like he's not been tested either. He's undefeated. Russian. He's not a big puncher. I feel like John Ryder, for me, John Ryder's very underrated. I'm not saying he's a top super middleweight, but I feel like he's improved quite a lot. This is a guy, he's been around forever, to be fair, but I feel like in this fight, because Sorokin's pretty unproven, I kind of feel like Ryder has a good chance here. And if he beats him, he's going to be in line for a big shot. And, in terms of the undercard, like I said, he's got Isaac Chamberlain. Isaac Chamberlain against Luke Watkins is a good fight, by the way. That is a good fight. A good British fight. Luke Watkins, former Commonwealth champion. It's two guys who've lost to Lawrence Okoli, but it's a very good fight. One of the better domestic fights quite some time in the cruiserweight division. It's very evenly matched. But basically, it's like Martin J. Ward, Felix Cash, all those guys that they're all kind of fighting in kind of regular. Should be very easy wins. Ted Cheeseman's fighting Byfield. That's a good fight. They're talking about the winner of that potentially fighting Anthony Fowler next year. So overall, this card's kind of a lot of fights where it's a solid card British-wise. A lot of these fighters are kind of fighting guys where it's just to get a win and they're going to be pushed on to bigger things next year. But watch out for the Chamberlain-Watkins fight. I think Ryder's got a good shout. And the Cheeseman-Byfield one is a good one as well. So there's kind of 3 fights there that people should be tuning in for.
I agree. I definitely agree with the Watkins Chamberlain sort of co-sign that that's a really good cruiserweight fight, especially in the UK market. 2 guys that did lose to Okoli, but that doesn't really mean much because Okoli is a guy that, while he does produce some anticlimactic fights, is still highly talented and still has a pretty good ceiling, in my opinion. And I like that they're sort of doing like the losers of the Okoli fight against each other. I just like the hardcore narrative around that. I think it's interesting. We're going to move on to the boxing news of the day, then move over to MMA. So if anyone wants to call in right now for that only the boxing topics, 323-870-4051, or email me, mixedcombatradio@gmail.com. If you already have that link, I send you via that email. You can just use that link to call in. No problem. By way of Mike Coppinger, good old Mike Coppinger, who's really stepping up, I think, over at Ring Magazine.
Yeah, you know what, man? I said this the other day. I used to, to be fair, about a year ago, I used to give Coppinger quite a lot of flack.
We all did.
I tweeted it. I tweeted him a few weeks ago, and he followed me after. I tweeted him saying, "You know what? Like, you have become a good source. Like, you're putting work in now. You're very reliable. He does break news, and he's got good sources. So fair play to Coppinger. You know what I mean? Like, he did get a lot of flack, but at the end of the day, he's putting in the work now. So respect."
Well, I like that he used to be, from what I used to remember from Coppinger back in the day, is that he used to be more of like a columnist. Like, he used to write more op-eds, and I never really vied with his opinion. Now that he's more of just one of the major guys breaking news and just that, really, I think he's in his element. Obviously, like you said, great sources. He hasn't really missed yet. I think him going to Ring TV and Ring Magazine definitely helps him out, and vice versa. Like you said, I think everyone in the media used to make fun of Mike Coppinger, and he's turned out to be a pretty good journalist. So salute to him, just first off, like you said. Always good to sort of make note of that. And really the only boxing news we're talking about is news that he talked about. Going on Twitter.
I just want to add that, no, it's not really breaking news, but it's a bit of an exclusive I got earlier on, so I thought I just might put out on here. There will be an article, an interview about it, but I spoke to Lewis Neary.
That's right, I saw that. I wanted to ask you about that.
Yeah, I spoke to Lewis Neary, and he told me that he obviously fought not that long ago, but he's going to fight. He said he's going to return on December 8th. And he told me, I'm not surprised a lot of people, because obviously he struggled to make bantamweight, but he's told me that he's looking to move down to super flyweight next year. Ooh. He wants to dominate 3 divisions. So he wants to make a move down to super flyweight. He wants to be at super flyweight, bantamweight, and super bantamweight in the next year. So that's what his target is. But it'd be interesting to see if he can make super flyweight, because he's had trouble making that bantamweight limit.
Yeah, I doubt he can do that. I just want Lewis Neary active and fighting the top competitors. Whether it's at 118, 122, does not matter. I am just hyped for Lewis Neary back in action fighting guys like Isaac Dogbe, Inoue, Zolan Tete. Like, those are all fights that interest me. So just make them happen, Lewis Neary.
I will post. I'll be writing it up. I should get that interview up tomorrow night or Friday morning. So if anybody wants to check out, just follow me on Twitter and I'll post the article up.
Yeah, definitely go do that. Cameron Gillen _ Mike Coppinger over on Twitter saying, sources, I reported last week that Pacquiao Broner was likely headed to Showtime pay-per-view. That's exactly how the fight will be distributed. January 19th in Las Vegas, big-time pay-per-view fights for Showtime in back-to-back months. Not really, breaking news. Obviously, Pacquiao Broner was rumored to happen for a while. That they've all been talking about that. And on top of that, we've sort of known, that it's going to be pay-per-view. We've heard that rumor around the water cooler for weeks now. This just seems like a final confirmation of it. What's your thought? I kind of ranted a little bit about it yesterday, to be honest, about the Charlers being on Fox, Pacquiao being on pay-per-view, and sort of the confusing sort of hypocrisy with PBC free boxing at this point right now when you just get in this Fox deal. What's your take on it, on sort of how PBC going forward is going to position fights on pay-per-view, Fox, and Showtime?
I'm not really surprised that Pacquiao Broner is going to pay-per-view. I'm really not. To an extent, simply because the fact that Pacquiao is Pacquiao and Broner's, Broner's Broner. It's 2 big names in boxing. Not elite. Broner's not an elite fighter. But, he's a known name in America, so I'm not surprised that fight's on pay-per-view. I don't see the pay-per-view market. The pay-per-view market's nowhere near what it was. Mm-hmm. Pacquiao, this isn't going to do big numbers. Pacquiao Broner's not going to do big numbers, but it's a fight where they can milk money off pay-per-view because it's a big enough fight to stick on pay-per-view. I'm just kind of intrigued. In terms of Pacquiao, right, on Showtime in that, how many of his fights, say for example, are all his fights going to be pay-per-view? Say if Pacquiao fought Porter, is that going to be pay-per-view? If he fights Furman, if he fights these guys, are they all going to be pay-per-view because it's Pacquiao, or they're going to be on regular? Because you look at the welterweight division. Now he's moved over there. Pacquiao against Thurman, Porter, Spencer especially, that fight would be pay-per-view, but is Pacquiao just going to be pay-per-view over on now he's moved over there, full stop? That's the question. Yeah?
It definitely seems like it would be, at least from a logical standpoint, if Pacquiao-Broner is pay-per-view, why wouldn't they make Pacquiao versus Danny Garcia pay-per-view? Or at least we should say this. If Pacquiao-Broner pay-per-view does well, let's say it does above 300,000 buys, they are 100% going to go to that well. Because it probably, for them, in their bottom line, makes more money than putting on Showtime, putting it on Fox, and having that fight eat up your budget for those network deals. That, to me, is really the only logical thought process that they could have about it. And like you said, it seems like it's going to be Manny Pacquiao pay-per-view on Showtime, full stop. It's only going to be that. Because why not? They've already broke the levy here.
Yeah, and you kind of look at it. The only reason Pacquiao's not been on pay-per-view the last sort of few years, I mean, Jeff Horn wasn't a known name. Vargas, these got Batista. I mean, Batista's a known name, but he was shot. I mean, Pacquiao, he just didn't have the names to be pay-per-view, whereas over on Showtime and PBC, he's got the names now where he can be on pay-per-view. Whether or not, I agree with what you're saying. I feel like if Pacquiao-Broner does 300 plus buys, his next fight's going to be pay-per-view. If it's kind of against a name like a guy, I mean, if he fights Broner, he beats Broner, it's going to be another big name after that. So we're talking likes of Danny Garcia. I think maybe he does fight Garcia. I don't really want to talk about the Mayweather rematch because I just kind of feel like that's not going to happen now. Just kind of based, I think Floyd's just kind of done with fighting guys. I think he's just looking at the MMA guys now, which is just ridiculous. Mayweather's retired for me, so I'm looking at the real kind of realistic targets. You're looking at Pacquiao against the likes of Garcia. I don't think he'll fight someone like Spence. Maybe he will. But if, like you said, Pacquiao-Broner does well on pay-per-view, which I think it will do, not huge numbers, but I think 300K is realistic, then I feel like we'll see Pacquiao on pay-per-view going forward. So,
yep. Welcome to the Manny Pacquiao Promotions / Al Heyman / PBC era. Welcome. It should be fun. I really don't have much to say about this topic anymore. Do you have anything else to say, Cameron, or you want to move on?
No, I don't know anything to say now.
Let's move on. Again, Mike Coppinger, shout out to him. Confirming what we sort of already know, saying sources, the A side for the 3 Wilder Fury pay-per-view slots are set. It would be heavyweight contender Luis Ortiz, heavyweight prospect Joe Joyce in separate fights, and junior middleweight champion Jared Hurd will return from shoulder surgery in the other bout. This has all been rumored for a while now. I have really, obviously, no issue with this. When that first rumor came out of, what was it? I think it was Gary Russell Jr. versus Leo Santa Cruz as the co-main. Obviously, that's better, but that was a pipe dream, let's be honest, just from a economic standpoint. Throwing Luis Ortiz, Joe Joyce, and Jarrett Hurd all on the undercard and even give me fights, I'll be honest, it's not a knock on the pay-per-view. It's not going to make me not want to buy it. It may not make me, go, I have to buy it now, but it's definitely not a negative at all. I think it just supports it. And plus, having a few heavyweights on the undercard, it sort of saves you from a potential, let's say one of these fighters doesn't make it to the fight. I know that's more of a, let's say, UFC MMA thing, where fighters get injured or they don't make weight, or they, collapse into a coma, the days before the fights. But with Tyson Fury, you never know. So I think it's good to have sort of an insurance card to have some more heavyweights on the card. Cameron, what's your take on the undercard? Is it pay-per-view worthy?
Yeah, it's pay-per-view worthy. I have no complaints. Undercard's good. I assume Jarrett Hurd's going to fight a contender, and then maybe they build to that Jamel Charlo fight early next year. I think that's Jarrett Hurd, good fighter on that card. Arguably number 1 super welterweight. So yeah, but in terms of Ortiz, and Ortiz will be back. Hopefully he's in a good fight. I don't want to see Ortiz against some scrub. Get him in there with a top 15 guy. Joe Joyce, get him in there with a good guy. Showing not fighting each other, actually. I think that'd be a good fight. Mm-hmm. But, the undercard's good. I mean, Wilder Fury pay-per-view, that fight on pay-per-view, it's pay-per-view on its own, right? I mean, let's be real. I mean, obviously you need to have an undercard, but I think this undercard's more than good enough to be a pay-per-view with that headliner. So I have no complaints. I will be buying this pay-per-view. And I will be staying up to watch it. So, yeah. And I never buy pay-per-views, man. I do not buy pay-per-views anymore. But this, for me, is worth it. So this is what I'll be doing. I will be getting it.
And plus, I mean, it's 3 entertaining fighters on the undercard. Like Luis Ortiz, even though he's had obviously duds in terms of fights, he's usually put on good, exciting fights. Joe Joyce has been exciting his whole career thus far. And Jarrett Hurd is one of the most exciting fighters in all of boxing. So I think as both from a viewing standpoint, as if you're watching the pay-per-view, or if you're in attendance, I think this is probably a net positive overall. Before we head into the UFC ONE Championship trade deal and move on to our MMA and UFC topics of the day, we're going to take one caller, Gary from Dallas, because I know he's not really a big MMA guy, so I know he probably wants to talk about the boxing fights and some of this news potentially. Gary, how you doing, man?
I'm doing good, man. How are you, Matt?
Always good, man. Always good to hear from you.
Good. All right. 2 things. First, I wanted to get to Pacquiao Broner. I don't know, but I'm kind of into this fight, right? Because the build-up is going to be good. Broner's going to sell it, and it's the perfect first fight for Pacquiao, right? Because Broner's like a B+ guy where he loses to all the A fighters and beats everybody else. So if Pacquiao beats him, we know where Pacquiao is again. And then him fighting Keith Thurman or Danny Garcia isn't ridiculous, right? Because he just beat Broner. So I think it's like the perfect first fight for Pacquiao in this PBC thing. Give me a guess. What do you think it does, pay-per-view sales-wise? What would be your best guess?
What's this, Pacquiao Broner?
Yes.
I think it does 300K buys, 300 to 350. That's what I think it will estimate around.
I think it does 350. About that number, yeah. I co-sign that.
Okay. I think it's going to get closer. Somewhere between 4 and 5. And I think it only does that little because it's just a month after the Fury Wilder fight. But outside of the heavyweights and Canelo, the 2 biggest names in American boxing are probably Pacquiao and Broner. It's like, those are names, like, you can say what you want about Broner, right? And I don't think he's a great fighter either by any stretch. But he sells. And to put him in with Pacquiao, who sells, I think this thing is going to do better than most people think it's going to do. And if Pacquiao does win, it propels him for a big fight against one of the elite PBC guys. I'm thinking Keith Thurman. That's just my guess. Because Thurman's going to have to come back at some point. Pacquiao's got the WBA world title, and Thurman's got the WBA super champion. I think WBA is going to say, okay, you guys need to fight each other. What do you think about that?
I just want to say, I feel like Pacquiao Garcia would do better on pay-per-view than Pacquiao Broner. I don't know what you guys think. I feel like Pacquiao Garcia is a bigger fight and does better on pay-per-view than Broner.
I'll put it this way. I think Gary makes a good point. We threw together just the biggest names in all of combat sports, Mayweather and McGregor, regardless of it making sense. And it's the second biggest pay-per-view buy rate of all time by a wide margin. Gary might be right that, hey, beside Canelo and maybe Mayweather, obviously, Pacquiao and Broner are probably the 2 most well-known boxers amongst the casual sporting fan, not casual boxing fan, casual sporting fan. It might sort of, just because of the combination of it, just because casuals go, oh, Broner and Pacquiao, I know those names. And they're going to see, 2-minute clips on Twitter of Broner going wild at press conferences and weigh-ins. And it could do 400 to 500. I think Gary makes a good point there. Danny, to me, I'm not going to say he's one of the greatest myths in boxing in terms of stardom, but it's very regional. He has obviously a great presence in the Barclays, a great presence in the tri-state area. However, I don't think Danny Garcia is nearly the level of a TV draw, just overall draw, period, than Adrian Broner. Regardless of Danny Garcia being a much better boxer than Adrian Broner, that I think has nothing to do with how many buys it gets. Gary?
Then the way I wanted to get to just one more thing. I was hesitant. I wanted to make this prediction, but I want to get it on the record. I know you guys are picking Regis Prograis to steamroll through Turbo Terry Flanagan. I'm going the other way. I think Turbo can outbox.
Are you off your tits? Have you been smoking something?
Who else? I like Regis Prograis. Who has he beaten? Who has he beaten at Turbo Terry's level?
Julius Ndongo.
Who's Flanagan beat?
Ooh.
Magdaleno and what was the Puerto Rican guy's name? Zepeda? He beat 2 guys in a row where he looked amazing.
But those guys aren't on Regis' levels. Those guys are far below that level.
Diego Magdaleno's okay?
Diego Magdaleno is not at the Regis Prograis level.
Julius Ndongo is much more proven than Diego Magdaleno, to be fair. Like, I'll go on what they've done. I mean, look, Flanagan, for me, I mean, if you give me the resume, Prograis has got not a lot better. Neither of them have beat an elite guy. But Prograis has got that win over Ndongo. You know, he did it quicker than Crawford. I feel like Prograis has looked much more impressive than Flanagan at a higher level. Or a higher level.
Gary?
I think Turbo's got the jab. I think he can keep him out range. But it's going to depend on how his power translates to 140, right? He got into a boxing match with Hooker and he lost a close decision. This fight will not look like the fight with Hooker. Hooker is going to try to make it ugly. He's going to try to get inside. I think it just depends on, does Turbo have enough pop to make Prograis respect him? Right? Does he have enough pop to keep Prograis just walking in the front door?
He doesn't.
If he does, I think he wins.
He doesn't.
Okay? Well, yep. I mean, that's what we're going to...
What from Terry Flanagan makes you think he has this significant power? Because he didn't have power at 135.
I don't think he has significant power like he's going to knock Prograis out. I think that's ridiculous. I think that he's strong enough, and if he has enough power, which I'm betting he does, just to keep him off of him, right? Just to stop Prograis from just walking in and steamrolling him. He can outbox Regis Prograis.
But hold on, if Terry Flanagan was as good as Willie Pep, he could just outbox him easily. We can say a lot of ifs. But
who said that?
But what I'm just saying that as like a comparison.
Oh, okay. I thought somebody just
No, because Gary says if he has power, but we can say
if. I was going to say so.
We can say if about anything. What have we seen? Terry Flanagan has never shown us that he has pop even at 135, let alone 140. Julius Ndongo has much more power, much more proven, especially at 140 than Terry Flanagan. I can see why you may think that Terry Flanagan off the jab might be able to win points, might be able to win some rounds, but he would have to do everything right, and Prograis would have to have one of the worst fights of his career.
I was going to say, on the Flanagan thing, this is a guy who hasn't got a win at 140 pounds. You know, he's got one fight and he's lost. He's not proven anything at 140 pounds. Like you said, at 135, not only did he not prove that he was a big puncher at 135, but he was not even proven at a puncher at a high level. Yeah, we're talking about a guy who was fighting fringe contender guys, and he couldn't knock them out. So for me, I think it's a massive shout to say that Flanagan. I understand what you're saying. You know what I mean? I think Flanagan is. You know, I'm a fan of Flanagan. You know what I mean? I like Flanagan, but for me, I just feel like I go on what I've seen, and considering what he barely did at 135 at kind of a fringe level, he didn't have power there, and he's only lost one fight. He's only had one fight. It's also 140. I can't really see how he can really keep Prograis off him and keep him at range with his punches because he just has not got the proven power.
So the three best names on Flanagan's resume: Zepeda, Magdaleno, of course, and then Orlando Cruz. He's knocked all three of those guys out, didn't he?
But come on, man, look at those knockouts. Like,
Orlando Cruz,
I'm not saying he's got all world power. It has to be just good enough to keep Prograis off him. I'm not saying he's gonna knock him out. He's gonna hurt him every time.
It doesn't. No, Gary, you're wrong about that. He doesn't need just power to keep him off him. He needs more than that. He needs absolutely more than that, and he doesn't have it. And let alone that, he doesn't have really the boxing skill to capitalize on it. He's not quick. Doesn't have great lateral movement. He is very one note. He comes forward and goes straight back on the center line. Works off the jab. Very fundamental work, but quite basic. Like Terry Flanagan, again, he had a good run at 135, but he was a widely unproven talent even there. We wanted him to fight Jorge Linares and other guys like that at 135, and he never did.
Let's go on the facts. Right? Flanagan was a champion at a fair few defenses, but the moment he stepped up against Maurice Hooker, who wasn't even proven at the time, another kind of...
We all hold on, Cameron, just to add to that. We all thought Maurice Hooker would lose that fight. We all thought that.
Yeah.
And now we're talking about a guy in Flanagan. He stepped up to somewhat, he proved up a little bit. He moved up a little bit in level. He kind of raised his game. He fought a high level a little bit, and he lost the fight. So for me, based on that, I don't see how, you've really got to go. Prograis is somewhat proven at 140 pounds. Flanagan wasn't proven at 135 pounds, and he's not proven at 140 pounds.
But Gary, keep going. We love this.
Look, I mean, that's really all I got. I think he's a better boxer. I think if his power, and I'm not saying his power is good. I think if he has respectable power, I think that's what he needs to beat Prograis. I don't think Prograis been tested much, so I don't know how he's going to respond when he can't simply steamroll somebody. So I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to say split decision for Turbo Flanagan, and I'll pull you guys up on Monday, and either I'm going to be a genius or I'm going to look like an idiot, right? But
do you know what? Right? If this happens, right? If that happens, I will give you all the praise in the world.
which means so much.
You'll get all the praise from a random guy in the UK who potentially knows what he's talking about boxing.
Gary, what's your take on the other fights this weekend? Daniel Jacobs, Sergiy Derevyanchenko, all that shit, all the shenanigans.
Jacobs Derevyanchenko, I think, has got fight of the year written all over it. Because I think Jacobs is a little too brave for his own good sometimes. I think he could outbox Derevyanchenko. But Derevyanchenko's a bull, and he's gonna take Jacobs out of his fight. But I think Jacobs does enough, outboxes him and wins a fight that's much more entertaining and much closer than it needed to be. Then I don't know anything about Anthony yet, so I'm not even going to comment on that. But I think he's going to. I don't know anything about
a lot of people have it. Don't worry.
No, don't worry. After Saturday, no one will care either. We're going to forget about this dude.
And then the Hughie Fury fight. I'm not serious, but I think Hughie Fury is underrated. I really do. I thought he won about 8 or 9 rounds against Joseph Parker.
Man,
I had his fight wider than the AJ fight. I had Fury winning 9 rounds. I had AJ winning 8. I thought I think Fury's really good. I think this is. What was the name of the guy? Sexton? What was the name of the guy he fought last?
Sam Sexton. Sam Sexton.
He keeps looking good. Hughie Fury keeps looking good. I think he could be a major player in the heavyweight division. So I'm interested to see how he looks against, not a world-class fighter, but, a B-plus level fighter. I think he'll I don't think he'll knock him out, but I think he'll win a pretty dominant decision.
I agree. Gary, anything else?
That's all I got.
Thank you, Gary. Always appreciate your calls, man. Always ends up being a very fun debate. That is for sure. I see Ron is there, but he hasn't pressed 1. I'm assuming Ron, also a huge MMA fan, wants to wait for his call after, obviously, we talk about the UFC ONE Championship trade. So let's get to that now. Obviously, a seismic shift in the sport, a historic moment. Not only in MMA, I feel like this is historic in all of combat sports. This might be the first ever trade to happen in combat sports history, let alone MMA history. One championship is allegedly per Ariel Helwani. Actually, let me get the tweet up so you guys can see the information. Shout out to Ariel Helwani, man. Obviously, probably the biggest journalist in all of combat sports, even bigger than Dan Rayfield, I would say. By him saying breaking one UFC championship, close to trade involving Demetrious Johnson and Ben Askren, potential history in the making. Just to add to this a little bit more information, Eric McGracken, one of the best people to follow on social media if you're a combat sports fan, one of the few lawyers that's truly dedicating a career to covering combat sports from the legal perspective. He adds that the Johnson-Askren trade is completely allowed within the contract of what we know of UFC contracts. It says Zuffa shall have the absolute right to assign, license, or transfer any and all of the rights granted to it hereunder, including but not limited to blah, 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 basically. So that clause is what gives the UFC and Zuffa the sort of the clout or the ability to trade independent contractors. I know some people were curious about that. Anthony Walker over at Showdog.com in the chat saying trading independent contractors. This brings up some serious questions. Fighters, do not sign over your rights. That is the number one thing. Do not sign over your rights, whether it be likeness rights or anything else. But sort of back to the substance of this trade. Obviously, the UFC is trading one of their greatest fighters of all time, one of the greatest fighters of all time, period, in MMA. One of the longest reigning champion in their company history after a controversial split decision loss in a tight, close fight. You know, for a guy in Ben Askren who's undefeated, a little bit long in the tooth, but undefeated, a guy that Dana White has hated throughout his career, and also a guy that would be going in and facing Tyron Woodley, Colby Covington, and the likes of that division. To me, this trade makes no sense on almost every level. Ben Askren is not a draw. It's not like you're trading up if you're the UFC. You're getting rid of your arguably one of your greatest, if not your greatest, champion of all time in DJ. On top of that, it seems like this could be the move towards them disbanding the division, the UFC flyweight division at 125 pounds. This would be the equivalent of boxing and sanctioning bodies getting rid of the 126-pound division. So imagine Leo Santa Cruz, Gary Russell Jr., Oscar Valdez, all those guys, all of a sudden just their division not existing. This is seemingly what it might lead to. There's a lot of concerns here, I think, from a lot of angles. Cameron, what was your sort of first take when you heard this news? Mine was pretty shocked.
My initial reaction, when I saw Ariel Helwani post that up, my initial reaction was, what the F? Because I look at it like this, right? Ben Askren's a guy that Dana White is just, Dana White's just never liked Askren, right? We know that, right? Askren wanted to be in UFC. Dana White spoke about before how they arranged a meeting with Askren to get him into UFC a few years ago. It never worked out. He said that Askren wants to come in, get a bit of money, and get out. He's not interested in, in anything else other than the money. And it looks like they're looking to really just get rid of this. This is the end of the flyweight division. Look at Cejudo's want to fight Dillashaw bantamweight. And the fact they're getting rid of Johnson, who, is the greatest flyweight of all time, bar none. Arguably a lot of people see him as the greatest fighter of all time. I personally don't, but he's up there. So they're getting rid of him, and they're bringing Askren in, who the casual fans don't know. No casual fan knows Ben Askren, right? And he's not going to be a draw. He's not going to be a pay-per-view headliner unless he fights the champion. But look, what is Askren going to do for the company at this point? Why now? Why are they bringing him in now? What's the thing behind it? Is it because the fact that they can get him in and they can give Johnson over, and it's just a way to get rid of the flyweight division? And Askren, I feel like a lot of people in the UFC want Askren in the UFC. I feel like Dana White probably has always wanted him in the UFC because he's a top guy. He's just destroyed everybody he's been in there with. They've just never come to terms before, so maybe it's changed now. But it's just the fact the trade. I mean, I'm not sure if you saw, but somebody tweeted Askren, I think it was a few days ago, and they were like, "What are the chances you've been in the UFC?" And he said 98%. And then Helwani retweeted that quote and quoted it saying, "There's some talks going on about Askren going to the UFC." But this whole trade thing, I mean, this has just come out of nowhere. Very shocking. I don't know. It's obviously going to happen, right? Like, let's be real. It's close to happening. Whenever someone like El Helwani posts out saying that, it's going to happen. So, for me, very shocking news. But one are winning, right? I mean, let's be honest, one championship are winning here. They've got Alvarez, and now they're going to get Demetrious Johnson. I mean, the company are making big moves. But in the same sense, Askren for me, I've said this on Twitter earlier on, Askren for me is a guy that I was really gutted when he retired because I thought this is a guy who we're never going to see how good he is. And now we're going to see how good he is because we're going to see him in the lights with the best in the world. So in that sense, I'm happy. I want to see Askren in UFC. I'm disappointed to see Johnson get out of the UFC. But I'm looking forward to see Askren against the likes of Covington, Usman, you know, a lot of these guys, Dos Anjos even, you know, a lot of these guys, maybe even Khabib, you know, a lot of these guys. So, I mean, I'm not sure about Woodley. I mean, don't they both train under Duke Rufus?
Yep, they're
so
teammates.
Yeah, so I'm not too sure where that would happen. But, nah, in that sense, you know, I feel like Askren, we're going to see how good he is. We're going to finally see how good Askren is. And in that way, I'm happy about it.
Yeah, I mean, that's obviously the silver lining is that we finally get to see what Askren is really made of. I just thinking that it's still a net negative, you know? Like, it is still Demetrious Johnson, maybe not in his prime, obviously. He's still probably closer to the end of his career than he is, obviously, the beginning of it or his prime. But he's still a guy that he can come in and beat Henry Cejudo. He can still lay claim to that division and rule it. But I think the UFC, Dana White, whoever you want, the Fertitta brothers, now WME, whoever it is, they have no interest in actually promoting the 125-pound division. They do not see the money in it for some reason, even though in boxing there is a long, long-running trend of that 126-pound division, featherweight, being a money division. It can be. When Eric Morales was there and Marco Antonio Barrera was there, they made money there. You know, 135 has such a history for being a money division as well. Vasily Lomachenko fought at 126. He's gone on to be one of the biggest fixtures of ESPN. I made this point on Twitter, and I actually got a lot of flack for it, and I'll stand by it. Demetrious Johnson, a fighter that weighs on fight night, or weigh-in night, or weigh-in day, whatever, about 20 pounds less than a guy like Terrence Crawford. However, Demetrious Johnson is far and away a bigger star and draw than Terrence Crawford. The only metric people can look to counterpoint that or counterprove that is last weekend's 2.3 million, 2.5 million viewership on ESPN. Other than that, gate, attendance, pay-per-view buy rate, consistent viewership, average viewership, Demetrious Johnson blows him away. But yet we see Terrence Crawford, obviously and deservingly, a major priority of Top Rank and ESPN. Demetrious Johnson is an afterthought and now being discarded without any say-so in his career to another promotion thousands of miles away. If you cannot see the difference in how the mentality is for these lower weight divisions in boxing versus MMA, I don't know what else will show you. This is the clearest sign that the UFC has a obvious and personal issue with the 125-pound division. Henry Cejudo's moving up to bantamweight, like you've talked about, against Tito Dillashaw. That's been talked about for a while now. Sergio Pettis is moving up. Those were the only two guys they were invested in. They weren't invested in Demetrious Johnson. They weren't invested in the division. Now it's going to be scrapped. And let's not forget, 15 years ago, the UFC did this to the lightweight division, 155 pounds. Imagine the division that had Canelo Alvarez really start making his career notable. Imagine that division not existing. Crazy. They got rid of the lightweight division for a long period of time because there wasn't enough room for the matchups. They got rid of BJ Penn and everyone in that division. And now 15 years later, the biggest pay-per-view buy rate in UFC history, the third biggest of all time in combat sports, was headlined by a lightweight fight. Like, the UFC is ignoring their own history. That's the worst part of this. This is recent memory where they did this same exact thing and they fucked themselves over, and it took them a decade and a half to realize that mistake. And instead of actually realizing that mistake, they committed it again.
I just want to say, isn't in the ONE Championship, aren't their weight divisions higher in weight now? Didn't they add it? Because as far as I remember, welterweight is 185 pounds in ONE Championship. So there was some sort of thing like that, but they added weight onto these weights about 18 months ago. I remember Askren weighed in at 185 pounds for a welterweight title fight. Now, I'm not sure what flyweight would be in ONE Championship, whether it would be 135 pounds, but it's something along them lines in ONE Championship. So, you know, I'm not too sure. I think if you cut more than 15 pounds in one championship, you have to move up in weight.
Mm-hmm.
So if Demetrious Johnson cuts more than 15 pounds to make 125 pounds, he'll have to move up in weight. That is a guideline that one championship has. So it'll be interesting to see how that plays out.
Yes, I mean, that is something that obviously is going to be a factor. I'm not really thinking about that much. This is just it's obviously an historic event. It's a historic moment for the sport and just for all of combat sports because this opens Pandora's box. I saw Scott Coker go on Twitter and say, we can trade ? With some emojis. So, why? If you're a boxing promoter, why aren't you looking at this now? There must be some clause in there to allow you to do it, just like the UFC does, just like Bellator does potentially. Again, Pandora's box has just been opened in combat sports. The age of trading away independent contractors without their say-so is now here. That is potentially quite dangerous for fighters. I think that will be more of a major point going forward long term than maybe these other minor ones like Ben Askren. Finally, we've seen what he's like at the high level, or Demetrious Johnson. How does he do against Bibiano Fernandez? Like all those things are very minute to the big seismic shift that we see now in combat sports. We're gonna move off of that unless you have something else to add.
No, man, I'm just.
Okay, we're gonna go to a caller.
That's muting myself there. Sorry, man.
Oh, don't worry about it. We're gonna go to a caller, Ron, the mastermind, over at TBV, a good friend of mine. Ron, how are you doing? Obviously, what was your first initial thought when you saw this news?
The first thing I was thinking is wow, ONE Championship is definitely doing pretty well in the sense of getting more American attraction to them. And then the second thing that came in is this dude, Demetrious Johnson, gets no breaks, man. This dude literally does not get treated well, man. It's crazy. I just don't understand the effort to kind of keep this guy around. And the whole idea of possibly maybe getting rid of this weight class. It's to me, that was if that does happen, it's you just freed up the division. You have a new storyline. You can build this up however you want, new matchmaking, more interest, because I know some people probably wasn't as interested because they had someone so dominant. I'm well, things are going to be interesting now, right? It's a whole new timeline in this division. And if they're going to get rid of it, it's why? This is your opportunity now. It's not the same old cliche. I get it. The guy's so dominant. He's so well, documented to be this great fighter. He's had so many title defenses. Well, that era's gone. And that's what made boxing a little bit more exciting. When Floyd Mayweather left, Manny Pacquiao was not in those type of threatening fights, or we don't know actually. But either or, when the stars leave, more stars come up. So this is an opportunity for this long dominated weight class to have someone new step up, a new face. And it's this just makes no sense. I thought it was so stupid for, I know they're bringing Ben over from ONE Championship, but I'd rather keep Demetrious Johnson if I was thinking long term. So.
Absolutely. And plus Ben Askren, Ben Askren doesn't equal them more money, doesn't equal more legacy. I truly want to know the reasoning behind this. What was the thought process? Because it makes zero sense to me.
Yeah, I have no idea. I've seen Ben a little bit, but let's keep it real. How many Demetrious Johnson fights have people seen opposed to Ben in viewership in the United States? After catching I was at a fight in New York, immediately following that fight at the Andre Berto and Devin Alexander, I immediately jumped in the Uber and I pulled out my phone and I was watching Demetrious Johnson fight, right away, right before the TJ Dillashaw Cody Garbrandt, which was the co-main, they were using it as another selling point to get that fight card excited, and it did really well. I think it was one of the top UFC buys this year or something like that.
Yes.
So, like, I don't know. Like, the numbers are there. You got someone he's been on the UFC game covers before too, right?
Yes, he has.
So they use them for marketing value. So, like, I just can't see them putting Ben on the UFC cover. You know, I don't see them promoting him the way that they could have promoted DJ. So in this case, I mean, DJ has his own fan base outside of it. He does his Twitch gaming. Like, he's well marketable, and he's a poised guy too. I don't see anything negative about him. You know, there's no negativity. Like, it's so strange. I still am kind of like, I'm confused. Like, I need to hear him talk about it and explain the rationale about this decision.
Yeah, I wish we could. Ron, what's your opinions and predictions about the fights coming up this weekend?
I'm really interested. I think the most interest I probably have is the Daniel Jacobs and the Derevyanchenko, just because the fact that, you know, Derevyanchenko is still kind of like an unknown, but there has to be some sort of confidence. If he was in the gym, he's seen, you know, Danny Jacobs. I know this happened many times for sparring partners like Lamont Peterson, Errol Spence. You know, Lamont felt some type of way and then he got demolished, but I think that was a point where Lamont was a little bit past his prime and Errol was grown into his own. So in this case, this is someone who is seasoned and someone who's coming up. So I'm really interested, and I know that he had a split camp. So it's one of those fights where I can safely, like, probably just go with the bet of just saying Danny Jacobs just because I know him more. But, you know, the unknown is always there with Derevyanchenko because this is his step-up fight. We never got to see him probably show his truest form, because they always say people show their best performances in you know, when they have a big fight, you know, and that often happens, you know, when people criticize someone's performance or they haven't fought no one. Well, this is it. So I can't really pick, but I'm going to pick Danny Jacobs because that's a safe bet. But this is the most interesting fight that I've been looking forward to for this year.
I probably agree. Very
okay.
quickly, I just want to add to that. It's definitely one of the fights that I'm actually really looking forward to. Just from like a style standpoint, what it can produce in the ring, it's up there.
Yeah, and it's a lot at stake too. So it's like, you know, the division has slightly opened up since, you know, Triple G no longer has his titles. Demetrious Andrade just got, you know, the vacant belt. Billy Joe Sanders is still kind of like so-called, some people call him the lineal WBO middleweight, which is funny. But, you know, it's true to a degree. You know, Canelo has shown that he is a very dominant force in the middleweight division, as well as, you know, all the potential prospects that the middleweight can have, and the whole DAZN shift and the Charlo. So this is a definitely exciting weight class next to heavyweight and welterweight. So I'm definitely tuned into this one. And for the World Boxing Super Series, I don't ever count the first seeds, like the first matchups. Like, I always just give it to the guy who has the higher seed. I mean, I unless you can tell me otherwise, has there been a seed upset when it came to the first round in these tournaments in the World Boxing Super Series?
I don't think so. I'm trying to think of like the first season, because nothing this season yet, obviously.
No, the closest one was definitely that Emmanuel Rodriguez, which I kind of already knew that was going to be a tough fight because it was more mandated, and I've seen Maloney fight a little bit, and I've always been kind of questionable about Emmanuel Rodriguez. You know, I know he's good, but I do see
he's not great.
You know, things that he can work on. Yeah, and I think Anu is going to kill him. But going back to what you were saying about, has there been any upsets in the seeds yet?
No, I don't think so, because Jürgen Brähmer was the higher ranked seed over Rob Brandt. Eric Skoglund was the lower ranked, you know, person against Callum Smith. I think every top seed has won that first round. I'm pretty sure you're right.
And most of them, especially if it's like a big seed difference, has been a pretty dominant, obvious, you know, performance. So, you know, I'm going to watch them, but, you know, it's not really so much for me to see an upset. It's really to kind of critique how the fighter is going to look against their opposition. So, like, when I watched Emmanuel Rodriguez, I was watching that to really assess how he would do against Inoue. Me watching, Tete was really my understanding that how he would look against, if he fights Burnett. So that's pretty much what I'm just looking at the World Boxing Super Series. So I'm just going to go pick the obvious choices in those. And then the Heather Hardy fight is going to be pretty interesting. So I thought that was pretty cool for they actually went and decided to put the women's on HBO, following trends, even though HBO is going out the door. That was pretty cool and commendable for them to at least make an effort to put Heather Hardy and her opponent on there. I know Twitter's been putting a lot of emphasis on the mustache and the beard, which is my questioning is, I'm not a doctor, but would you say that there is some need to put testosterone to create that in that case in a boxing study? I know they study.
Well, I mean, you can be a fighter and have testosterone in you. It's called a TUE.
Correct.
I mean, it's not like she can, but it could be completely legal. And it could be low levels, too. It could be low levels testosterone. And it can be, outside the camp. I mean, there's a lot of things they could do where it's not a big deal. Because it seems... Yeah. Because I don't want to speak on... very quickly. I don't want to speak on it too much because obviously I don't know Shelly Vincent. I don't know what her plans are. I don't know what she identifies as, So it's obviously, like you said, it seems like there's some steroid use, but... not steroid, just steroid use, and that's again I would say testosterone use, not steroid use. Sorry, testosterone use. But again, that could be completely legal, and there's been a long running trend for men doing that as well. So it is what it is.
Yeah, and that's all. Like this is nothing to. This is not anything saying that she's getting any type of performance advantages against Heather or anything. I'm just curious, I'm probably going to try to do the research and study to understand, like, what are the things that in case if someone does want to use those things for their own personal, whatever reasons, to understand, like, the allowance in boxing and understand, like, obviously there would probably be someone who would use it as not saying her, but just to educate the sport because this is like a totally different time in the sport. And, I've just kind of thought like, wow, this is probably some sophisticated advancement to allow you to get whatever you need for personal preference and also be able to compete without affecting any type of advantages and stuff like that. So that's probably something I'm going to probably take some time to learn in about, but that was like, oh man, this is kind of cool.
Well, Ron, I mean, Ron, you're an MMA fan, so you remember like the Chael Sonnen, like TRT era of the UFC, right?
Yeah.
And just for those that don't understand that reference, about 2008 to 2012, I would say 2013 was the TRT era, where it became widely known that you could get pretty easy TUEs, and TUEs are therapeutic use exemptions. So let's say you have a surgery. Let's say you have hypergonadism. You have certain diseases where you're not really producing enough testosterone. You need testosterone. You can get a therapeutic use exemption from the Athletic Commission to use, in effect, legal steroids. And it was widely abused in that era. If anyone wants a really easy example, go Google Vitor Belfort TRT and just go to Google Images. You will have such a fun time, and that's probably the only time you can really point to like, wow, I can tell, I can see the usage there for PEDs. But and that was, I think, predominantly fixed. I believe the ABC or maybe just individual commissions, they shored up, I think, their sort of standards for therapeutic use exemptions. I think WADA as a whole recently as well, along with VADA and USADA, have sort of rewritten their standards for TUEs and such. Again, like Ron says, I probably need to do a lot more research into that. A guy that, if you're trying to get more of a academic look at PDs and PD regulations specifically in sports, Paul DiMio, go find him on Twitter, Paul, common spelled Dimeo, I think is how you spell his last name. He's a professor, I think, from Edinburgh, one of the leading academics when it comes to this sort of field and study. Sorry, Ron, I took up some of your time there.
Oh, no, it's cool. I mean, like I said, it's for the sake of just understanding. I appreciate her representing, and I think it's just more just to educate people out there because, it broke the internet to a degree. So I felt like at a point, for us to at least take the time to research and educate and understand that, this is the boxing game. And, as long as everyone has a fair advantage and understand that whatever their personal agenda doesn't affect their ring performance, or no one uses and abuses it, and she's able to represent what she wants as herself as a fighter, I think it's great. So I definitely am going to look forward to that fight. And, Machado going to win that fight. He needs to get a championship fight. He needs some unification action, man. So I don't want to see him out here fighting guys who don't get paid. That one dude didn't get paid, and I forgot who he fought, but it was a dude from Africa that he ran to Don King to try to get some money, and he was getting beat up. So I know Machado got some pop in his hands, and I would like for him to start getting some unification fights for next year. So I'm going to pick him. And Pulev and Hughie Fury, oh, God, I'll probably watch midway through that. But I'm going to give Hughie Fury maybe the advantage just because he's he's younger, a little bit more mobile. I think that he'll probably get a point decision in that.
I agree. Anything else, Ron?
Isn't there some MMA fights this weekend?
Yes, there is. I haven't gone to them yet, just because I wanted to take your call right after I talked about the trade. You want to talk about Anthony Smith, Volkan Oezdemir? You can go into it if you want.
You know what? I can't really put a pinpoint on who I think will win. I know one's coming off of a DC ass whooping, and I know the other one's coming off beating an old Rashad Evans. So I'm just excited.
And hold on, and Shogun Hua. You can't forget the GOAT. Come on,
Shogun.
The original McGregor.
I know.
Okay.
I know he's beating these very accoladed older guys. So that's where I'm curious to see how he sizes up. And I know DC put an ass whooping on Volkan, so it's a good gauge to see where these guys are at. So I really don't have a definitive pick or go in depth. I can say I'm just very excited to see the fight. That's pretty much it.
Thank you, Ron. Always appreciate your calls, man. Always gonna call in anytime. You know that. Sort of going back to, or sort of piggybacking off of what Ron is talking about with the UFC Fight Night 138, which obviously no one cares about the numbers anymore. Volkan versus Smith. I like how they just go with Volkan's first name. They don't put Oezdemir, they just put Volkan, and they put versus Smith. Why not Volkan versus Anthony? I'm just saying, keep it equal. But anyways, digressing. I think this one's a little bit easier to pick than probably Ron does. I think Anthony Smith should win this. While Oezdemir did look pretty great on the come up, beating Misha Cirkunov and others, they were such quick fights that we never saw him really have to work. Go a 3-rounder, 5-rounder, and really, go round and have to sort of adapt his game and such. Anthony Smith, while a guy that has beaten a bunch of old guys recently, a bunch of fading legends, is a guy that's been around the block for a long time. At one point, we all pegged him as a journeyman, getting a bunch of losses on the regional scene, and he's all of a sudden put it together. Had a phenomenal winning streak, heading into this fight. Plus, I think his level of striking and grappling has just gotten better in terms of skills and technique. I definitely get a Robbie Lawler vibe with Anthony Smith. While Oezdemir, I still view him as highly unproven. Because when he did go and face Daniel Cormier, he didn't do much. He really didn't have much moments of success in that fight that we can point to and go, yep, that's what he looks like against high-caliber opponents. And again, Anthony Smith may not be at 205, what we think he could be, but I think he beats Volkan Oezdemir. 3rd or 4th round, TKO / maybe a submission a la Don Cerrone style. But I really think Anthony Smith wins this one pretty convincingly. Oezdemir's really only shot is to hurt Smith with a shot and really knock him out. Other than that, I don't see it happening. I don't think Oezdemir really has the skills to place that shot like we may think he does. Co-main event, Artem Lobov versus Michael Johnson. R.I.P. Artem Lobov, man. Been a good run, man. A guy that is 14-14 and 1 in his MMA career is the co-main event of this card, and he's not Mark Hunt. I don't know how I feel about this. Obviously, he gets a spot because he is Conor McGregor's BFF, FFL. You know, I don't know how many Fs that was, but it was not enough because of the bromance between them. So that's why Artem Lobov is getting the shot. But Michael Johnson, even though he himself is only 16-13, he's fought at the highest level for so long. It wasn't that long ago he knocked out Dustin Poirier in vicious fashion. He's one of those guys that just, he's inconsistent. And on top of that, he has fought the who's who of the lightweight division going on a near decade now, I feel like, in the UFC. I think his record sort of reflects that. And Lobov has never beaten anyone near as good as Michael Johnson or beaten the guys that Michael Johnson has beat. Lobov has really no shot here except for a winging left hook knockout out of nowhere. Some fights I'm going to mention on the card. I'm not going to go in depth because I think there's a lot of just notable guys here. Misha Serkinov on the card against Patrick Cummins. That's sort of a good, top 15 light heavyweight fight. Andre Sukmath versus Jonathan Martinez. Andre is really looking like a talent. His record doesn't really reflect that, but I think he's highly talented. Gene Vellante versus Ed Herman. The battle of the guys with the most boring fight careers of all time who've been in the UFC for far too long. Court McGee versus Alex Garcia. RIP Court McGee. We've loved you, man. Nordine Taleb versus Sean Strickland. I actually really like that fight, to be honest. Nasrat Hasparat versus Tibul Goulet. Nasrat's pretty good. He should definitely win this one pretty handily. Calvin Kattar versus Chris Fishgold. Calvin Kattar is definitely made me a believer. So I definitely go watch Calvin Kattar for sure. And Sarah Marias on the card as well. Shout out to Sarah Marias. But let's get to the rest of the news of the day, and we're going to head over. Call in 323-870-4051. Press 1 to get in the queue. If you are international, email me, mixedcombatradio@gmail.com. Mitty, I see you in the chat speaking a whole lot of bullshit. Call in. You have the link. I want you to call in, Mitty. I'm challenging you.
I want smoke!
Because you're saying some wild shit in the chat, so this should be fun. But I'm going to get to some more MMA news while Mitty either accepts the challenge or he backs out, Just saying.
I said it last year. We're not here just to take part. We're here to take over.
I'm here to take over, just saying. And speaking of McGregor, actually, Brett Okamoto sort of giving us the play-by-play of the NSAC, Nevada State Athletic Commission, preliminary meeting. That's not the right word. I'm going to go with meeting, though, even though that's wrong. Concerning the McGregor-Khabib post-fight brawl, he says, the NSAC votes unanimously to release the $1 million of Nurmagomedov's $2 million purse. The other $1 million will continue to be withheld pending its ongoing investigation. And just to add to this, no official suspension has been given out. No official punishment has been given out yet. This was very preliminary. The Attorney General of Nevada told the commission heads that they can go basically to the full extent of punishment that they can. They could ban both guys for life and take away all of their purse, including their pay-per-view pay as well and everything on top of their guarantee purse. They have a claim to it. Shout out to Uncle Sam. That doesn't seem likely, though. Let's be honest. Oh, Mitty saying I can't speak tonight, bro. Oh, hold on. Let me get the sad music out here. Let me get the special sad. It's okay, Mitty. It's okay. I know, you're busy. Dad life is dad life. I understand that. But I'm just saying.
Just send me location.
Just saying. So back digressing to the actual commission, their punishment, the investigation, all that stuff. Still ongoing. I will obviously update you as it goes, but at least Khabib is allowed $1 million of his dollars to, of his purse to pay his trainers, pay his manager. Shout out to Ali. And actually, I really wanted to stitch back, mentioning Ali, to the DJ, Demetrious Johnson, Ben Askren trade. It's an added element I think is, I don't know the extent of how far it goes, but definitely it's a valid aspect of that whole trade. Matt Hume, who is the trainer of Demetrious Johnson, has ownership stake in ONE Championship, which now Demetrious Johnson is being traded to. I don't know how I feel about that. Obviously, Ali Abdelaziz, sort of stitching all together, the manager of Khabib Nurmagomedov, the very infamous manager, he had the same issue with World Series of Fighting, which is now Professional Fighters League. He was running it. I forget what exactly his position was, but he was running it. Bayside saying, "Where's Noah?" Yeah. I definitely need that in soundbite form, right? I definitely need a "Where's Noah" soundbite. But anyways, but Ali ran World Series of Fighting basically with Ray Zeffo, and he signed a bunch of his fighters. Looks like Matt Hume may be doing that as well. Now, obviously, ONE Championship is not a U.S. promotional company. I don't know what the laws are over there. I don't know if it conflicts in any way. I don't know. It's just something I think we should make note of, keep an eye on, see if more Matt Hume fighters go over there. Definitely not the same. It doesn't seem to be the same level of crony business. Anthony saying Ali was matchmaker. Thank you, Anthony. Doesn't seem to be the same level of cronyism as Ali. Maybe because Ali was so blatant about it, and obviously he has such a large, stable fighter team manages that he brought so many in. It became too obvious, like make your corruption a little bit more on the sly, a little more back room, and he was flamboyant about his cronyism. Matt Hume isn't that, so it's just obvious. Aesthetics of it are different. Surface level, it seems different in a way, but also a lot of similarities in terms of just how it can lead to a crony nature with ONE, and just I'm not going to say a black eye, because I think that's too far at this point, but it could lead to that. This leads to more sort of information about them being corrupt. I've been using that word. I don't know if it's the right word. I wish Anthony could call in as well, 323-870-4051, to add some more insight to this, since he is a MMA journalist through and through. It just seems, I don't know yet. I need more information with the whole Matt Hume connection. It doesn't quite scream Ali Abdelaziz situation yet, in my opinion. Moving on, I think this is the last topic of the day. Brett Okamoto. Shout out to Brett, man. One of the best in the business. Saying, per sources, UFC close to finalizing a welterweight bout between Gunnar Nelson and Alex Cabra Oliveira for UFC 231 on December 8th in Toronto. Fun addition to the card. Blah, blah, blah. I love this fight. I think it's fantastic. And plus, I miss Gunnar Nelson. This was a guy that long before there was Artem Lobov as Conor McGregor's BFF, FFFL, there was Gunnar Nelson, and I felt like he had some losses. He was really inactive. I think he had some injuries as well. He sort of just fell off, and this is going to be a good win if he does win against Alex Cabra Oliveira to sort of catapult him back into the mix, as they say, in that welterweight picture, which is really top heavy right now. It'd be interesting to see, who can win that one. But, ladies and gentlemen, that is it for today. Want to especially thank, obviously, everyone that called in. Gary, Ron, Cameron for joining me for another show. Hopefully he becomes a little more permanent. He won't be on every show. It's unlikely. I do a show every day. But he'll definitely be on more, so that'd be nice. Always shout out to Cameron Gilland _ his internet dropped off, and he couldn't come back on, unfortunately. But, ladies and gentlemen, I am Matt, the Hipster Hunter. Will be back tomorrow, same time as always, 10 p.m. in the UK, 5 p.m. Eastern, 2 p.m. Pacific, to discuss news, topics, fights, rumors, and all that shenanigans and shit in the combat sports world, from boxing, MMA, and everything in between. Find me at Matt Hunter MCR, all platforms. Obviously, this is Mixed Humber Radio. Hit the like button, share the show, subscribe. If you haven't done that yet, shame on you, man. Come on, shame on you. Definitely smash that like button. Also, I know it's the same 100 people watching this show, and we only get 20 likes. It's the same 100 people. You obviously like the show, guys and ladies. Just hit the like button. It's right there. It's free. It does not hurt you in any way. YouTube is not going to come in and fine you and everything like that. It's okay. Just smash that like button. It's right there. And if you listen on podcast, drop that review on iTunes. I think we have a new one, so I'll read some new reviews tomorrow on tomorrow's show. I don't think if you have a Android or anything like that, you can leave a review on whatever platform you watch. I don't know. But anyways, leave reviews, like the show, all that stuff, or patreon.com/Mixed Humber Radio. Peace.
Are you off your tits? Have you been smoking something?